I'd been there before about 5 years prior, and I step off the bus, and there are all these women. There were probably about 20 women. I got off, and I didn't recognize any of them until this one woman came and grabbed me. She said my name in Chinese language, and I was like, oh my god, I did remember her from 5 years ago. And so I was really relieved at that point that I had found my village, and she literally grabbed my elbow and dragged me to the homes that we would start to visit, to my ancestral home. I went in there, I paid respects to my ancestors, surrounded the entire time by Chinese women telling me what to do and telling each other what to do and yelling and hoisign back and forth. I was seeing things, I was smelling things, I was hearing things. I was picking up a language that is spoken in San Francisco, but not as much, and it was very familiar to hear it spoken so fluently and so pervasively with everybody. And knowing that I knew maybe about 1/8 of the language and I could understand maybe about 1/8 of what they were saying, that was also very heartwarming. After the village itself, they invited me to a dinner. And at first I was a little hesitant, and I was a little scared because I thought that meant I'd have to be by myself. I didn't know where they were going to take me. But Al calmed me down, and he suggested that I go. He said it would be impolite not to take up this opportunity, and that it would be a very good opportunity. That was the end of the beginning of my trip to the Choi-Side village. And going to the D side, father's side, we didn't find out where that village was until about a week prior to the trip, and Al somehow managed to fit it in to the schedule, into the itinerary, and I was very, very thankful for that. So we looked around the village, we tried to find these men, and we did, and these 3 men took me to where my grandfather's home was, and it was it had collapsed over the years. It was just a pile of rubble. But I touched the wall and I just kind of felt everything and tried to imagine what it would have been like, or what it was like when my grandfather and my grandmother on my dad's side lived there. That was actually the only moment, I think, when I actually kind of teared up, as much as I don't want to admit it. But I did tear up at that moment when I touched that wall, and I kind of felt like, wow, my grandfather probably touched the same wall. And he's passed away. He's been gone since I was 4 years old. So it meant a lot to me, and I know it meant a lot to my father that I had come to visit. And my father's planning to go back next year too. So I feel like I began this journey that my family will continue to take through the years. And who knows where it will end up, but I was really glad to be a part of that moment.
Over here. This is a site that you have to look. This is the village well, okay? For drinking water, remember the source. This is the most important thing.
From the pictures I have seen of my grandparents' village, I imagine it to be a 1-story house. I was told that the house was made with 2 parts, one for my dad and one for my uncle.
Klarissa, look back. Klarissa, look back at me.
Oh, yeah. There you go.
So I imagined it to extend out from the middle of the house where my grandparents would live. But instead it was a 2-story house with 4 bedrooms upstairs, 2 on each side. It was nice to see and just imagine how it would be like if I was living there with my brothers and my parents and living in the same house with my uncle and his 3 kids who are now married with their own kids. So it was pretty crazy just imagining that, how it would be. We went up to visit the gravesite of, I think, my grandpa's parents. I never met him, but it was more of a time for me to pay respects to my grandpa and grandma and just thank them for what they went through. And there was a time that I went upstairs when everyone else left the house. I was just by myself reflecting and talking to my grandma, which I do a lot, but no one knows that. And I don't know why, but I started crying. I just felt like I was closer to her when I was in that house, and I felt like we bonded in some weird way, even though she's not here with me anymore, but I know she's still with me. It was just a nice, warm feeling that I got.
When I was growing up, my grandma and grandpa used to take care of me a lot. I used to spend a lot of time with them in San Francisco. I didn't know anything about the past or any of the hardships they went through to get to where they were. When we were still on the bus, the official that was leading us around told us that we had some relatives waiting for me, I guess because my aunt had called them ahead of time to kind of warn them that I'd be there. So they stood at the gate waiting for me, gave my aunt a hug. It's the first time I'd ever seen them. And yeah, it was crazy because we'd never seen each other before. So they lead us into the house. It's like the second house from the edge. It was a lot bigger than I expected. It was just surreal walking through the house, seeing the picture wall, grandparents' pictures on them. A lot of those pictures we have. The house was nice, seemed inhabitable. I heard that my relatives had been living there up until a few years ago. They moved to the city. The ancestral home had a fan in it, 2 stories. Walked in there, did my vows, didn't have to light any incense because my family did it for me. Yeah, it was just like stepping back in time, just imagining, my grandparents living there when they were young. I don't know, just seeing how they lived. It's a real eye-opener for me.